Hi, and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne, and this is where we talk about marketing, data, philosophy, and business. This week, 6 easy ways to kill your startup. Now, we all know that cash flow is the single biggest killer of most small businesses, but today I have a controversial opinion for you. I have 6 things that a lot of founders believe are going to help their businesses, and most people would agree are true, but I think counterintuitively actually add to a lot of failures. Number one is I'll work harder. Now, don't get me wrong, running a business is a lot of hard work, it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of brain power and passion that goes into that. But there's a lot of advice on LinkedIn that I just have a gripe with. It's these people who are posting about, oh, I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm working till 8 p.m. at night and all of this kind of stuff. And I get so much more done. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a secret. What you've discovered is if you spend more time on something, you accomplish more. Gee whiz, I think we could all figure that one out. Now, of course, there's going to be times when you're working until the early hours or you're having to work at the weekends. That just comes with the territory of running a business. But your goal or your mindset should not be, I'm going to work harder, and that working longer is tied to working harder. You want to work smarter. You want to get the most out of your time. You want to get 2 hours of work done in an hour of work. You want to make sure your brain is switched on, and that you're at maximum sort of efficiency all the time, because that is a lot more scalable. It's a lot better for your mental health, and also, working all the hours in the day means that you would probably sacrificing other parts of your life. It could be social, it could just be the need to rest. And so I think working harder is a route to failure because it leads to more burnout. And instead, you should focus on working smarter and making the most out of your time. Number two, I'll shout louder. When you're a new business, it makes a lot of strategic sense that you're going to want to promote that business as much as possible. But there's a couple of things that's wrong with this. Number one is that people find the promotion side more fun. They find the marketing side more fun. They don't find the sales side as fun, but they think, hey, I'm promoting my business, so I'm doing that. No, you're not really. Number two is that when you are a new entrant to the market, maybe you're thinking about things like building in public, which is akin to posting a diary about how your business is going, focusing on a lot of marketing in the early days, sharing your successes, and sort of raising awareness. The problem is that you might not get the levels right. You might be posting every single day, and very quickly it becomes a little bit like, oh my God, you're a small business. You've been going for 6 months. I'm sick of hearing about it. Now it's not so interesting. And so people unfollow you. You end up in spam folders. Um, the other thing is that this is very easy to sort of maintain when you've not got a lot of work on. But as you sort of grow and you get busier, suddenly you don't have the time for all that social media activity. And so it falls off. And that actually has the opposite perception to the outside world that, oh, they used to post all the time and now they're not. Maybe they're not doing so well. And the other thing is that if you are shouting too much about your early successes, you come into the market as a new entrant, people might sort of think, well, don't get ahead of yourself. You've had a few early successes, that's great. But then longer term, maybe those successes are just because you're new and interesting and they're not part of a wider growth strategy. And so you want to be more strategic in what you're sharing and when. Number three is I'll be cheaper. Now, this is something I mostly hear from young entrepreneurs who plan to enter a market, undercut everybody else, and then sort of build from there. And in the early days of business, yeah, probably you will have to start cheaper and work your way up while you build a portfolio, you build happy clients, you build a reputation. But I wouldn't start a business with the mindset that being cheaper is a long-term route to success. I think that generally people who pay less still want the same high levels of services. And in many cases, the clients that you attract that want to pay less, they actually are more trouble and they want more time from you, even though they're paying you less money, which is sort of counterintuitive to a lot of people. And there are reasons why companies charge what they do, and it might not be so obvious to you starting out. So while you might undercut to begin with, you might suddenly realize that, hey, this takes a lot more time. There's a lot more sort of account planning and account management that I need to. And it's not just this pure skill or service that I'm offering. The problem also is that a lot of like big companies took this approach. So they purposely sort of made a loss. They got their market share over a long period of time, mostly in the early noughties. I'm thinking of things like Facebook and Amazon and all these kind of big case studies. So they were quite happy to lose money because they had the VC backing, get market share, and then start charging from there. And a lot of people want to emulate this formula. But that was 20 years ago now, you know? I don't think it's so easy to do that, and everybody is trying to do the same thing. And the problem is that when you're starting a business, um, if you've not got that VC backing and you've not got a long-term plan, then you end up in debt very, very quickly if you're not making a profit. And so I personally always prefer the route of you should be profitable from day one. Everything that you do should be centered around profitability. And there might be times that you're not always making a huge profit, or you're making a small loss. But if your plan is, oh, I'll just start cheaply, I'll undercut everybody, we'll get some more market share, and then I'll start raising price as well. That's not a long-term plan, and it doesn't always work. Number four is I'll enjoy it. I feel like some people kind of get off on running a business. Like they really like having their logo on a little cup, and they go and buy clothing with the logo on, and they spend time building a little website. And it's the same sort of thing as when you see would-be screenwriters down at your local cafe, and they're working on a blockbuster idea. And some people fall in love with the idea of running a little business and having something that they own, and I think that's nice in the early days. Um, but it's also true that running a business tends to ruin any hobby that you might enjoy, because the bit that you enjoy is like a small portion of it. And then surrounding that is doing the paperwork, doing the admin, billing people, dealing with clients, all of that kind of stuff. And so the bit that you actually enjoy becomes less and less, only maybe about 20% of that. And so I think it's definitely a mistake if you are going into business, or you've had businesses in the past where you think, oh, I'm going to enjoy it and it's going to be fun and interesting. And a large part of it is not going to be so fun. Number five is I'm great. I'm going to succeed naturally. Um, One thing I'm really, really interested in, I support football or soccer if you're in America. And it's really interesting to me when you get like a really successful manager, you put them in another team, and then it just doesn't work out. And I think that's one of the most interesting things to me. You know that they've been successful, they've got a way of working, and then you start to question like, is it the players? Is it the system? And so the same thing happens in business quite often. Um, Typically, it's because no one person is the MVP of any business. No one person is just the key to success. And so what often happens is I think people, they might get to a senior level in a larger organization or a more established organization. And yeah, they might be a crucial part of that business's success. And they just think, well, if I didn't have this red tape around me, if I didn't have um, the confines of the way that this business works, I'll be more successful. But they're always part of a bigger team. And so what tends to happen is that because they're sort of underestimating the importance of the processes, the reputation that might already have been built up, and the other people around them, they're not as successful, and they actually fail more often than you think. I've seen so many people who they used to be a big player in a big business, and they just think that that's going to open doors for them. And that might work in sort of year one of your business or even year two, but over time it's going to go down, whether people are like, okay, you were, head of marketing for Facebook. Wow, that's amazing. But 2 or 3 years down the road starts to matter less and less. And your small business is not set up the way that Facebook is, or it doesn't have that sort of social backing and excitement that Facebook did. And when you're starting your new business, the times have changed, and the business and the entrepreneurial world has changed, and so you can't replicate what made you successful there. So yeah, one thought process is that just because you were successful in the past doesn't mean you will be successful in the future. And last but not least, number 6 of easy way to kill your business is I will focus on the small things. Like the fun bit of small businesses and startups is the fact that you can be very, very agile. You can adopt to market fit really quickly. You can decide to change things, and it's not going to have such a huge impact on your business. You don't have that red tape. But I've seen a lot of times, especially people who are like middle management in companies and they're not so used to making decisions necessarily, or not responsible for the impact of decisions, maybe. That what they tend to do is they tend to put in place a lot of processes, a lot of small admin tasks. And although I think it's really good to have a process and a way of doing things and a way of working because you need that in order to scale, actually, when you're in a very small business or in a startup, that can kill your business completely. It's not always so necessary to document and process these things. And also the main problem is that they're focusing on the wrong things. When you start seeing a business, you really need to focus on your profit, where you're going to find customers, those early sort of sales side of thing. Are you going to be profitable? And less so on the things that sort of build towards those metrics and the underlying of what are you doing on a day-to-day business, what hours are you processing, all of that kind of things. And so yeah, focusing too much on processes in the early days and admin is an easy mistake to make, and quite often it's just a crutch because that's where you are more comfortable and what you're used to, and it doesn't necessarily answer the question of how is that going to aim towards your profitability today. And so there we have 6 things that they seem as if they're going to help your business. They seem as if they are good things that will contribute to success, but actually, I've seen them kill a lot of small businesses. What mistakes do you see entrepreneurs making quite often that seems like good advice, but isn't? Comment below, let me know. And thanks as always for joining me on Gin with